Light the fire, softly rise in the hush before the skies. Golden breath, the earth awakes. In the silence, morning breaks. Alana, alane, alana, alane. Fire in the dawn, we are calling. Light in the flame, gently falling. Hearts in the glow, slowly turning. Light is drifting through our hands. Steps arise without a sound, turning slow on open ground. Nothing held and nothing still. Air is leading where we will, through the grass and through the day. We begin to drift away. Solena Valaris. In the wind we turn and sway. Solena Valaris. Light is leading us this way. Sky is wide and breathing near. Every step is drawing clear. No sharp line and no command, only motion through the land. Nothing forced and nothing known. Every path is softly shown. Moving where the light will go. Solena Valaris. In the wind we turn and sway. Solena Valaris. Light is leading us this way. This way. din negeri mo Leis an novin Cleanim gelden sa gal Tána dúlioga a glúiseacht Mar a bheith siad ag dúiseacht dom Agus do chúla I mó chuomhne Cosúla solas bog an dom Ní fada ué man teas Tá sé ar imel an le Ag droi tríd an bhucht Ag casad I tro na gréine Bla an tamríoch rí Tagan do chúcam go ré Bla an tamríoch rí Tá an dochas ag fás ag ré Bla an tamrí Bla an tamrí Ficim an freoch ag oscailt I mealbán ar ghualing na cnoig Agus an capal sa feir ag siúl mar a bhfuil sé sasta go fáil Tan tráth nó na ag fanacht le tisean solis ar a laim Beg an fuachtas a sca fós ach an crí a géirit ag an haim Ní fada ué man teas Tá sé ar imel an le Ag droi tríd an bhucht Ag casad I tro na gréine Bla an tamríoch rí Tagan do chúgam go ré Bla an tamríoch rí Tá an dochas ag fás ag ré Bla an tamríoch ground is warm, turning slow, a gentle form. Through the light our bodies lean, moving where the air has been. Gradus lucis lente nos, in the light we turn and flow. Gradus lucis lente nos, softly where the breezes go. Feet are light and voices low, following the fire's glow. Every step a simple line, drawn in rhythm, soft in time. Gradus lucis lente nos, in the light we turn and flow. Gradus lucis lente nos, softly where the breezes go. Step by step, the ground is warm, turning slow, a gentle form. Through the light our bodies lean, moving where the air has been. Gradus lucis lente nos, in the light we turn and flow. Gradus lucis lente nos, softly where the breezes go. Feet are light and voices low, following the fire's glow. Every step a simple line, drawn in rhythm, soft in time. Gradus lucis lente nos, in the light we turn and flow. Gradus lucis lente nos, softly where the breezes go. drifting through the light, fading traces of the night. Hands are close, the flame is small, still it's moving through us all. Lazer Beo Railin, solas mor, las estai. By the fire we stand and stay, turning slow as night gives way. Beltane is flame. Dew is shining on the grass, footsteps soft as people pass. Through the hush of a waking land, we begin to understand. Smoke is lifting thin and slow in the early morning glow. Nothing rushed and nothing loud, just the fire and us around. By the fire we stand and stay, turning slow as night gives way. Beltane is flame. The trees carrying what we can't see. All we were is standing here in the warmth that draws us near. Lazer Beo Railin, solas mor, las estai. By the fire we stand and stay, turning slow as night gives way. Beltane is flame. San mal ní lán focail fós Fér a glóiseach tar talam fís cailé drum San bog fanan tes fós Fuin talam dorcha can euniars ma soiler Sa gwyd fog ar yn tala ffos bio Lon rŵf an saner Fys gael na mai diner Nil tinan ni os mo Ach tes fos an Fwyn talam domain I folws na cre Níl tínan anis ach rian fan fós Fanan sé fuin talam fé hosca kio Cí fóg a glóiseacht geal fan saner Cí fóg an einam fós Tríu egneas na parke Ní glói mid anis Ní ein ní mid fós Fanan sé gan focal Fi fever na haidje Fanan gach céimenis I grí agus I cuimhne Ní léon rud le cruthú, ní léon rud le caileh ach an rud a fanan ionin. Lean muid go máil go bog le ciúinos ar cóir ní gléimid ainm fanan muid. Lean muid fi seolas éadrom gan dorchadas na troid an rud a fuaire mar ligimid ui. Tine I mi héis ach fanan an teaslin ní sa lasar ná sa luath ach sa rúd a déirí Brian talla faoi éist gan faoi mer bíd rud